All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all of your greetings, all of your adoration, all of your polite acknowledgments. I appreciate all of them. I really do. Kim is here, everyone.
Kim, how are you?
It's always a good thing. And Albert is here, too.
Albert, thank you.
Also great. We will squire this show to conclusion. We have 2 live hours ahead for you. Trevor Starr in Hollywood says, where do I sign up for the resistance? Hashtag resist, bitches. Yeah. A lot of people not happy with the election. A lot of people I'm hearing feel that the election was fixed. The lefties feel that the election was fixed. And there's definitely the hand of foreign powers involved in the election, a la 2016, Russia, China, Iran. That seems to be kind of standard issue for a lot of the American elections now. But that said, it was a pretty convincing victory by the right. And I don't want to spend all our time going over the ashes of the election, but you will give us a couple of days to figure out what's what. And today we've got Michael Shure in the second hour. We will talk about the week in politics, as we always do on Fridays. And obviously this week in politics included a watershed election, an election in which you had a candidate enter at the last moment on the part of the Democrats, tried to power up. And I thought, as I've mentioned here before, she did very well, given the hand she was dealt, this last-minute hand and this very short runway on which she had to take off. And depending on where you got your news and depending on what images you took in and how you digested it, you felt either she was someone with such great wind at her back, such great momentum, that she represented a kind of defense of women's reproductive freedoms and the beating back of rising despotism, that you felt it has to be that she will win this election. You looked at the candidacy of this other guy and you thought, wow, look at him. He is all the hate. He's a vessel for anger, racism, xenophobia, rising fascism. He wants to weaponize all of these instruments of government against those who he hates, who are his political rivals. How can the Americans who I know vote for this man? And so with all of that in your mind, you thought, what is this going to be? She wins by 10 million votes, popular vote, but he sometimes, in some way, ekes out an electoral college victory. I mean, that's really what I thought was going to happen. I thought he might win the electoral college, but she'd win the popular vote. And I acknowledge this, and I've acknowledged it the last couple of days, because I want to be open about the fact that, and if you're a regular viewer of the show, I was not a Kamala Harris fan, but I did feel as though I understood the chess moves that got us to where she was the candidate. And I don't really even argue with the chess moves. Once Biden had, in my judgment, made the huge error of entering the race for reelection. I mean, just a massive error. But that said, I am with you in that I'm kind of astounded that the popular vote was won by Donald Trump. I mean, it's extraordinary. And those who say to me, well, it was fixed. And, I read a lot of Greg Palast, and he does a lot of stuff on essentially how they delegitimize a lot of votes, how they shed the voter rolls of a lot of minority votes.
Right.
Even allowing for that, it's something of a dead heat, Anyway.
Not that it matters at this point, but NBC is projecting that Trump has taken the swing state of Nevada now as well. It took a while because they're slow in counting the votes there, I guess, and me being meticulous, and they say, yeah, he's already been declared the winner, but he got Nevada too.
Yeah, and This is not, I don't know what this is, Mountain Boat, but we love your comments. And I've got a bunch of comments and I've got a bunch of emails, and I'll try to get to a few of them. And I think we may even start the show with some of this. Thank you guys for being here. This is a community, and it's very interesting, a community of people who generally follow news and politics. And one of the things I got, this is sort of an email, just to explain
The Mark Thompson Show.
Where we are. It kind of explains a lot of the philosophy of the show. We've always been a news-oriented show. Now again, not all the news is heavy. Not all the news is about Trump. In fact, most of the stuff we did was related to other things that affect our lives. But let's be fair. This is a huge inflection moment in the evolution of this country. And in my judgment, the notion that you could not talk about it and sort of do, I don't know, That's Rich, a segment that we talk about when we talk about, where big money is going and big properties that are up for sale, or anything else. Even when I did Friday Fabulous Florida, I feel like, okay, it's a diversion. We'll do it today. It's a palate cleanser from the politics. But to not really do deep dives on the run-up to this election, I felt would be malpractice. So for that reason, I really did focus on this campaign. Now, that said, not everybody was happy. I mean, it's like people saying, hey, why not get into other stuff, get into, maybe don't concentrate on Trump so much. Well, again, moving forward, the new Trump administration will be integrated into a bunch of other news. But as it's required, we'll continue to talk about Donald Trump and what he's doing. I've gotten some great emails and also some, troubling emails. Here's something from Noe Marie, who sent me a beautiful email, like, it's sort of expressing a lot of anxiety, and I will speak to that because I know a lot of people have anxiety about the future. As I may have been somewhat vocal about in the last few days, I've been sad and hopeless, she says here in this super chat. Woke up ready to kick butt, starting with the governor's Zoom today and followed up with resistance. Resist. Well, I love the fire in your belly, and I do think this. And I mentioned this, I think, in the context of, general anxieties and what to do and, oh, my God. And I get the, oh, my God part. I think you do have to concentrate on your world. Politically, I'm talking about. The all politics is local adage is true. So to the extent that you can make a difference in your world, in your community, on your school board, with your locally elected officials. I think this is a really important way to grassroots politics. And, really, all politics is local. And one of the things the GOP did effectively and has done effectively and continues to do effectively is to sow the seeds of political change at the local level. You see more and more of it. People are activated at the local level for the GOP, for the right. It's scary how effective they've been. Now, there's also dark money that's infiltrated the university system. Is it Qatar that I think funds an insane amount of university money when it comes to any number of programs. I mean, it's not just Arab studies, but when you have donors on the level of the Qataris into universities and into the American educational system, you're going to have a change in the way people view the world. And so, again, I would encourage grassroots local efforts. And it may be just on a cause that you care about. Maybe it's animal rescue. Maybe it's environmental protection. Maybe it's related to women who I think really are endangered by this coming crew. I mean, the medieval way in which the incoming GOP view a woman's role in society is scary. And I don't blame women for being scared. So that's what I would say. And I'm delighted that, Noah, you feel that way, because I got your email and it was, it was distressing because you said, look, I can't sleep, I can't eat. And by the way, I think this is a lot of people were two things. Shocked is the first thing, okay? I mean, the idea somehow that, wow, I didn't know what country I was living in. And the second thing is, oh my God, what am I going to do? What is the effect of this election? And I think now we're dealing with number two because we are getting over the shock. I saw an interesting. Now let me just, since I'm reading these emails, let me get you another one. This is an interesting. I'll just start you with a kind of conspiracy theory thing, just to get you. Here's a little appetizer. Okay.
Oh no.
Good day,
Definitely.
Mr. Thompson. Yes, good day. I love it. I love anything that starts good day.
Good day, sir.
Exactly. As I lay here flummoxed and disgusted from the overnight news. Flummoxed is a ding word. Bravo to Charlie, who wrote this email. I always enjoy your interviews, especially with Anthony Davis. I was watching the show, and Anthony was saying that there was no way Trump is going to lose. Unfortunately, his proclamation no longer holds true, as Trump is the president. I wrote a very long comment on the YouTube video comment section. Don't know if you saw it. I said, Trump will try to win no matter what because he's a malignant narcissist and a psychopath. All right, well, when you put it that way, he really. However, I have no doubt whatsoever, and here's the conspiracy part, that either he will quit the presidency and hand the keys to J.D. Vance, or J.D. Vance and all the Project 2025 crew will remove Trump from the presidency by way of the 25th Amendment, and Vance will become president that way. Vance is only 40 years of age. The most disturbing part of my opinion, though, is that Vance is a true believer. He is all in with the Federalist Society's effort to reel our country back well over 100 years, to put the patriarchy firmly in place with all the misogyny, belittlement of women, and male emotional abuse that goes along with that patriarchy. Trump doesn't give a damn about the government. He just wants to be a chief bully on the playground. Vance, on the other hand, is exponentially smarter than Trump. He will also likely, he's a narcissistic psychopath as well, and he will do everything he can to fulfill the promise of Project 2025. Going on. It's a very long email. So that is a conspiracy theory that I feel is, at least for the narrative that you've laid out, is really like a cool movie narrative, but I don't think it's a real narrative. I think what you have in Trump, and I know you're going to be angry again, all of you who blow me out when I say this, like Sheila, who's in, and I will get you, some of Sheila's emails are really good because they're short and they just pound the crap out of me. I believe Trump is a charismatic figure. I know you don't want to say it and you don't want to believe it, but you should. He is a charismatic figure, and he, in his unapologetic, bizarre, self-indulgent, egotistical, fanatical way, throws those fireballs and is able to bully an entire party. He bullied the GOP into being cowed by him and his acolytes. I mean, look at Marco Rubio now. Marco Rubio is Trump's bitch, and he'll be serving in a high post in this incoming administration. But the reason I mention Trump and in this narrative of J.D. Vance is he's useful to J.D. Vance right now. He can be the charismatic guy who essentially reps a lot of these positions. And here's the only thing I will say: if you want a narrative that's kind of interesting and you want to see something destabilized, they'll never institute the 25th Amendment. I understand the 25th Amendment is talked about a lot. It was talked about in 2016 when he won the election. Can't you see what he's saying? Can't you see what he's doing? Half of the people around him in his cabinet think he's an idiot, think he's insane. They're going to institute the 25th Amendment. Okay, again, that's a great narrative that never got hatched. It's just, again, it's a thing that's fun to talk about at Thanksgiving dinner. But what could happen, and if you want a destabilizing thing, I'd look at this. Elon Musk is a very powerful man now. He bought this president the Oval Office. Now, based on exit polling, it seems like Donald Trump might have been able to get there anyway. But, I mean, control of a major social media platform and over $100 million, that matters, okay? And more to the point, I think Musk is seen as something of a genius, and he's elevated because of his status financially and just culturally, right?
He reminds me of Dr. Evil.
He is a James Bond villain. There is no question about that. I mean, it is really true. When you leave a comment up there, does that mean I'm supposed to read it? Okay, I can't read the comment and I keep a train of thought. There are probably people who can, but I'm not one of them. So I do want to get to Luis and all of your comments. But what I was going to say is he's a James Bond villain in almost a perfect a James Bond villain narrative way. He is insanely rich. He controls a space program, essentially, now in SpaceX. He controls the largest social media platform, or certainly one of them, in the world. And he runs this massive car company, Tesla, which also is involved in electric batteries and other things that relate to everyday society. And he has the Boring Company. He has this breadth and portfolio of stuff that is super relevant to the world. It's not just America. So he is the Bond villain that finally bought a president. And now he will have, and again, keep your eye on this, he will not, and then I'll get back to what's going to happen with Elon Musk. He will not necessarily personally be in the Trump White House, you understand, although he might be. I mean, occasionally. He doesn't want to, I think he's full of ego and maybe he wants to be there for, once in a while. He's kind of like Trump that way. But he'll have people there in key positions. He's already lined up key people who will operate in the Trump cabinet and represent Elon Musk interests. He will have his way with legislation and with the regulatory agencies.
And Elon Musk has a lot of his businesses are subsidized by the U.S. government.
Of course, and those subsidies are going to increase, and as I say, the regulations that he's had to deal with are going to melt away. They've already had a big showdown, the government and Elon Musk, over his launches. As you know, I've detailed it for you before. The EPA, and I believe one other agency, and even local agencies that are involved with the environmental the fouling of these areas that are pristine wildlife areas around some of his launches. They've already gone up against Elon Musk, and Musk is sick of that. He wants Trump to get them off his back, and Trump will get them off his back. But I also feel as though Trump's a big ego, Musk's a big ego. I love the clock that we should run, or the bet that we should run on when Trump turns on Elon Musk.
Oh.
I just feel as though this town ain't big enough for both of them. Unless Trump so feeds Musk everything he wants, in which case I think Musk just kind of is quiet and quietly takes everything that essentially Trump buys him out that way. But I'd watch for that. I mean, I think it's an emerging narrative, but I don't, the 25th Amendment thing, it's just, it's interesting and all, but the Constitution says Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of religion, Carolyn says. So it is all right for the courts to effectively make laws upholding some religious beliefs because the Constitution doesn't specifically prohibit it from doing so? Then break out your theta meters or whatever the Scientologists use to measure whatever. Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. I mean, the separation of church and state is something else that's melting away. On this Friday, I want to say a shout out to a new Patreon member, John
Big shout
Marshall. Thank you, John. Thank you for joining our Patreon community. And the greatness of our country lies in the free and fair elections and peaceful transfer of power would just put Mr. Trump back in office, says William. We do not have to go back to that. We have never lost it. So he's basically saying, this is Bill. He lives in Berkeley. That we have free and fair elections and there will be a peaceful transfer of power. And that just put Mr. Trump back in office. Yeah, I mean, there's no question that's true. I think the Democrats are more likely to give you apparently in the new age, a peaceful transfer of power than are the Republicans. That would just seem to be the case.
Well, you were talking earlier about, and I don't know if you want to get into this right now, the reason we have a president-elect Trump, right? Then there's apparently one person to blame.
There is absolutely one person to blame for Trump still being out there.
The Mark Thompson Show.
And it's very funny because on this day, the press special counsel's office, Jack Smith, calls for a halt in the Trump prosecutions. He just called for it. That happened just within the last hour.
Yep.
And it's a remarkable thing, but it is really true that everything that we said would happen with the Trump victory in terms of his court cases is happening. And it's happening at a hugely, hugely warped speed. The criminal cases against him, the two of them are dead as a practical matter. And I'm going to get to the one person, and he's a Democrat, who is responsible for Donald Trump even being in the political game. There is one Democrat. I know that we're talking about, the Democrats have lost sight of the people, et cetera. I'll get to all of that in a second. But the Georgia case, that will go probably away. This is what the view of David Katz was as we talked to him yesterday. But now I will speak to the one person who is responsible for Donald Trump being in the election to begin with.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a lot of talk, and there is video that we'll share with you and punditry across the punditry-verse saying the Democrats don't understand the people anymore. The Democrats don't understand the working class. The Republicans have been the party of the working class. I challenge that on the facts. I mean, there's no disputing the result of the election. And I will get to some of the reasons I challenge it. I mean, you can look at the capping of insulin. You can look at the negotiation on drug prices. You can look at the fact that the president of the United States walked a picket line with union members in Detroit, and he's up against a guy who is campaigning with a billionaire who is the richest man in the world and who is notorious for breaking unions. Still, this other guy somehow connected with the people more than did Joe Biden and the Democrats. And they turned on the Democrats in such a way that they really repudiated a lot of these democratic reforms, even though you can look at them as just the child care tax credit. I mean, these are things that absolutely touch people. They absolutely help people. The Republicans want to roll all that back, and that's not just theoretical. You can see what Republicans voted against that stuff I just mentioned, against negotiating drug prices, against a cap on insulin, against child care tax credits. So we know it to be the case. But I think this moment in America has to do with the ability to get the word out and also how you digest a lot of this information siloing as well. So there's all of that in the background. And we'll talk more about it, and I get it. And the Democrats, I told you, the day after the election really have to come clean with the fact that they don't connect with the people on some level, or they have to express their message in a much better way. But I really think they may need, a true house cleaning from the standpoint of how they prosecute their messages, prosecute their campaigns, and choose their candidates. But now to issue one. Why is Donald Trump still in the American political system? He shouldn't be. He is because of one man, Merrick Garland. If Merrick Garland hadn't slow-walked charges against Donald Trump, for 2 years Merrick Garland delayed. The only reason Merrick Garland even brought charges toward Donald Trump was an investigation, is where it started with Jack Smith, of course, and then ultimately charges, is because of what? The January 6th committee. It was so undeniable that even Merrick Garland, even the tepid, spineless Merrick Garland, who was an embarrassment to the Justice Department, even he couldn't sit back and let that go. The January 6th committee's investigation and public hearings effectively forced Garland to investigate Trump, and eventually Smith's appointed. And again, that's 2 years after the incitement of a riot at the Capitol. Trump's loss in 2020, and then everything that we found out about him jacking documents, him actively hiding documents, I mean, all of the things that Trump was guilty of necessitated an immediate probe from the Justice Department, and I'm leaving out January 6th. The guy engineered a coup, and you didn't even initiate an investigation? And we kept hearing, well, he's investigating, he's getting... BS. It should be done right away. It's absolutely insane that this man, Merrick Garland, is the reason that we had Donald Trump.
Why do you think he didn't do it right away? Why didn't he move faster? What was
because
the point?
he's a tepid institutionalist. He didn't want the appearance of the Justice Department investigating a political foe. So even as Donald Trump cries about the fact that they've turned the Justice Department against me and these are politically motivated prosecutions, the reality is just the opposite. Donald Trump was the beneficiary of one of the greatest gifts from the Justice Department that any American has ever gotten. It is absolutely why we have ended up here. The risk that they ran, the gamble that they took, was all about, we don't want the appearance of politics, and that's the gamble we all lost, and the risk that we've now seen was horribly fatal if you look at the likely narratives from here. A lot of Garland defenders say that they were following a standard kind of bottom-up investigative effort where they prosecute the rioters first and then they get up to the kingpin. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. When there are large overlapping groups legally in big investigations, they try to get to the top first. So the Justice Department really dropped the ball on this, but it was Merrick Garland. It really is Merrick Garland. It's his Justice Department. You could have prosecuted all those people who charged the Capitol at the same time that you investigated Trump and put your case together for him.
If President Biden appointed him, as Stephen McCarthy reminds us here in the chat, then wouldn't it be President Biden's fault that we have a President-elect Trump?
Sure. And I think that you can absolutely lay some of the blame there. Mm-hmm. But I make the Attorney General the real guy on this. But you're absolutely right. Of course, the trail of breadcrumbs does go back to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is the ultimate institutionalist. It's what I didn't like about him. I've never liked him because, and he surprised me, as I've said on the show many times. I think he had a successful presidency in many of the ways that I've detailed here, and he had transformational legislation when it came to his infrastructure bill. There's a lot of that stuff that I mentioned that was in the infrastructure bill. But I really have to say that you can't count on the GOP. Of course, Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans, they could have convicted Trump. They, after the second impeachment, which laid out all the reasons that this guy should be nowhere near Washington, they could have easily prevented him from running again for the presidency. And then you would have had Nikki Haley versus whomever, Biden with the diminished capacity, or you would have had Kamala Harris. But the greatest rehabilitation of a reputation in history is the rehab on reputation that Donald Trump had organized and executed. Between the time that he left Washington and now, it's amazing. But he would not be around without Merrick Garland sleeping. And again, if you want to go back, you can go to the Senate Republicans. I mean, they really could have stood up and said, hey, dude, we're with you on a lot of this stuff, but you can't, turn an angry mob on this great governmental body and get away with it. He might have been better on the Supreme Court. I'm just saying, good thing he didn't become a Supreme Court justice. He might have been better. He'd probably be one of the more even-handed Supreme Court justices. But Trump's world of grievance, the way he turned indictments into political wins, the way he sold successfully, I'd have to say, his aggrieved party born anger at those prosecutions into political wins, it was extraordinary. And so people rallied around him. And, all of his, I think, legal setbacks just occurred way too late in the game. And fundamentally, Merrick Garland let it happen. I'm just looking at the comments as well.
A lot of people want presidential immunity clause to be kicked into effect. I saw one person said, "Why can't Biden just throw Trump in jail?"
Yeah.
Democrats don't do that. We're not that.
That's exactly right. And the Republicans know the Democrats don't do that. Yeah. I mean, it's just not the party that does that.
But if it was Trump that had the presidential immunity and he was looking around, who do you think would be in the lockup?
I don't know even that they're in the lockup. I think David Katz made a great point yesterday. He's our former federal prosecutor who comes in on Thursdays. If you haven't heard him, he's terrific. And he made the point that, when the government goes after you in court, or it goes after you in any way, but generally you end up in court, even for taxes or whatever, they can bankrupt you. The government, with limitless funds, they can bankrupt you. And so they never have to put you in jail. They can make it worse than jail. I mean, really, they can ruin your life. You can lose your family, your house, everything, defending yourself against the government. As soon as SCOTUS ruled on presidential immunity, Biden should have issued an executive order saying felons can't run for president, said Dave. Yeah, I don't think, again, I think these are, I told you in my movie, after that Supreme Court decision, he declares, Biden does, or the president in my movie declares the Supreme Court justices enemies of the state, has them arrested. That's the way, a B movie ends. Biden, with presidential immunity, doesn't have the power to issue an executive order to then overturn the scenario that was just suggested. Oh my God, I totally agree about Garland, and Biden only appointed him because he unfairly missed out on the Supreme Court appointment. But add McConnell to the list for refusing to go ahead with Garland's appointment, Elizabeth Musto. Yeah, that's a really interesting point that we haven't mentioned that. Elizabeth is saying, hey, Garland was nominated to the Supreme Court. They wouldn't even, this is under Obama, of course, they wouldn't even take a meeting on that. And that led Biden to, overcorrect by making him Attorney General. It was like a make good. I think there's a lot to that. And that's the kind of guy Biden is. He's like, hey, don't worry, buddy. I got you. You deserve that Supreme Court seat, and you're going to be my Attorney General. And then, again, Garland just sleeps on everything. So the Supreme Court will only become more emboldened and only be more GOP in the next 4 years. So I think at the end of it all, you can blame Merrick Garland for, at least once Biden had ascended to the presidency, for sleeping on the case against Donald Trump for 2 years. And I understand Trump kills the clock and delays and appeals, but had you had 4 years to pursue it, it would have definitely been a different outcome. And Trump, I think, would have not survived it. Obviously, if you go back in time just even a few months prior to the Biden administration, McConnell and the Senate, they permitted Trump to live on. And now, look at those guys. You know, if they're not absolute Trump loyalists, Trump will crush them like a bug. Phil Smith said Garland had no business being the AG. Soft lefties don't do a good job with prosecuting the rule of law effectively. You know what? I hate to say it, but I kind of agree with that. So, and in polling, a huge swath of the public, somewhere around 60%, wanted Trump to stand trial this year in the 2020 election subversion case. Before the Supreme Court weighed in, an even larger portion of Americans, somewhere around 70%, rejected the idea that presidents should be immune from prosecution for alleged crimes that they commit while in office. This is from Politico. Again, the polling reflects that the public very much had an appetite to see Trump pay a price for what he'd done. This is a president, the incoming president, who concocted a scheme, a coup scheme, to overturn an election with fake electors and then ultimately a violent mob.
And he's going to skate. He's no justice, no consequences.
And his Supreme Court, his hand-picked Supreme Court, gave him the immunity grounds this year that then essentially has ushered in a whole new era of criminal immunity for Donald Trump. And that immunity, no basis really in law. And when they did that, they had to go figure out other ways to prosecute on the January 6th charges and on the coup charges. And then ultimately, of course, it's all moot because Donald Trump wins the election. So again, it's all bad, and there may be, as I always say, the trail of breadcrumbs back to Joe Biden, back to Mitch McConnell. But ultimately, the final check, the final firewall was Merrick Garland. And for me, he really didn't step up in any way. And when you look at Donald Trump, as I said earlier, this guy who claimed the justice system has turned on him for political reasons, I believe he was the beneficiary of one of the greatest gifts from the Justice Department that any American could ever get. And it turned into the greatest political reversal of fortune in American history. He will be the next president of the United States. Remarkable.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
You've got to be kidding me. Albert, you've got to be kidding me. It's 15 minutes to the second hour. I've only got 15 minutes before the second hour starts. This is outrageous, Albert. This is incredible. What is
Albert? Thank you.
I don't know what's going on. I totally blame you, Albert. How could you let me blither on like that, like a blithering blither-oner, without stopping me from blithering on like that?
I blame you.
All right, maybe it's my fault. But the point is, we have very little time. Now, what are we going to do? I really want to do a law and disorder still. Even before Florida, I want to do law and disorder. Can I do that, Albert?
Yeah, I've been standing by on the button. So
okay.
Albert, thank you.
Howard has been standing by on the button, everybody. That's great. How dare you? How dare you? All right. You know, on this show, we like to look at things beyond just politics. Sometimes there's overlap. Seems to be, of late, a lot of overlap between the law and politics. We look at the law. We look at the streets. We look at what's happening. We do it all in a segment we call Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Well, it may not come as a surprise to you, but I was a bit surprised to see that everybody's favorite ex-mayor, Rudy Giuliani, everybody's favorite ex-lawyer to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, the guy who was found guilty of that contempt charge and then found guilty in the civil case of defamation of those two sweet Georgia poll workers. He was thrown to the edge of penury, of being penniless. What was he going to do?
That's a ding word.
Penury is a ding word, you're right.
Yeah.
Was he going to be able to step up somehow and save his house, save all of his Yankee swag, his prized possessions? What was he going to do with that penthouse apartment?
Gonna cheat like he always does, Mark.
He was going to have to sell it, but he had a different plan. That's right.
What?
He was going to move it. A lot of that stuff can be moved. They were supposed to be handed over, all that stuff. The Mercedes-Benz, which is a vintage Benz, a signed Joe DiMaggio jersey, 26 designer watches, because he had to know what time it was in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. Those items and more were supposed to be handed over last week to begin paying off a $148 million judgment to two former Georgia election workers whom Giuliani defamed. Well, the deadline came and went, and still nothing was turned over. The judge said, this is the final deadline. Brushed aside Giuliani arguments that the possession should remain with him. He said, get rid of them. Get them over to them, or I will hold you in contempt. Well, now, it would appear that he has tried to hide those possessions. And in so doing, the judge is livid. He wants Giuliani to be hit with contempt charges. Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, the former election workers, they sued Giuliani for defamation. He claimed, without evidence, that they tried to steal the presidential election. They should be in possession of all this. $148 million is what he's facing. His home, a 10-floor apartment near the top of a white glove cooperative building, those co-ops in New York that are really hard to get into. It was listed in October for a little over $5 million, down from the original price of $6.5. And still that is being delayed. In the courtroom, his lawyer argued that forcing his clients to surrender a watch given to him by his grandfather was vindictive. The judge said, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. If they have a debt, they have to be paid. The law is the law, said the judge. On Halloween, when lawyers for Freeman and Moss were granted access to the apartment, they said they discovered that Giuliani's most valuable items, luxury furniture, art, and Yankees collectibles, had been moved.
Clean the place out.
A week earlier, he got rid of all that stuff, moved it in hiding from the court.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Many of the items have been put into storage in a Long Island facility, said a lawyer.
Sayonara, sucker!
All right. Several watchers in a 1980 Mercedes-Benz convertible are at Mr. Giuliani's Palm Beach condo, according to his lawyer. We've asked for where the stuff is over and over, said a lawyer for the two women. The notion that your client doesn't have any knowledge of where his assets are located is farcical, said the judge. This is a to be continued, but Rudy doesn't look like he's stepping up to make good on the debt. Texas secessionists are declaring revolution after the election result. Independent campaigners have hailed, quote, a revolution in Texas politics.
You mean we're not going to have a Texas anymore? Aww.
Well, 10 Republicans who've committed to supporting a referendum on secession from the United States were elected to the state legislature, Kim. They have, for some time now, they have maintained this position that Texas should get rid of that pesky USA and become a Texas state of their own. It's the Texas nationalist movement. And 10 politicians, all of these people won seats in the Texas House, were signatories to the Texas First Pledge. They vowed to, quote, vote for legislation and resolutions to call for a vote on Texas reasserting its status as an independent nation and to work toward a fair and expedient separation of Texas from the federal government if this referendum is won. They continue that fight. The man who smashed doors and ultimately the door moments before an officer killed a Capitol rioter, sentenced 8 years in prison.
Well, he won't have to serve that time. Trump will come in and he'll pardon everyone. Done.
No, it's possible that you're right on that, Kim.
That guy's laughing right now. Like, yeah, 8 years. We'll see.
The man who stormed the U.S. Capitol smashed the glass panels on a door moments before a police officer fatally shot another rioter climbing through the opening has been sentenced 8 years. Zachary Alam, one of the first rioters sentenced since this week's electoral victory by President-elect Donald Trump, who, as Kim has noted, has repeatedly vowed to pardon and free supporters who attacked the Capitol. Before learning his sentence, Alam said that he and all the other January 6 rioters should get what he called, quote, a pardon of patriotism. I want a full pardon, he said, with all the benefits that come with it. I don't want a second-class pardon, he said. He'll be out by February of 25, says B.A. Ware, and that's exactly what Kim is saying as well. You'll remember Ashley Babbitt, the 35-year-old Air Force veteran from San Diego, shot and killed by an officer as she tried to climb through that shattered glass. And finally, where are my weed smokers at, Albert?
Where are my weed smokers at?
Florida voters rejected a ballot measure that would have legalized recreational marijuana for adults.
What?
They needed a 60% supermajority.
Doesn't anybody better weed?
You know what's interesting about this one?
A little bit. Okay.
Is that Donald Trump supported this one.
Yeah, he knows. It's a political winner. I mean, there really aren't, but apparently there are in Florida. I was going to say there aren't many who would, vote against it, but apparently in Florida there are plenty who don't want it to happen. The campaign faced opposition from the Florida Republican Party, though, and Governor Ron DeSantis. He said that it would negatively impact quality of life. So they were aiming to allow up to 3 ounces of marijuana, and they wanted to, reclassify marijuana. That can only be done by the DEA, but there are discussions underway to reclassify marijuana. But now Florida's voters have spoken, and they have failed to legalize recreational marijuana in Florida. That is Law and Disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Well, I didn't realize, Albert, and of course, it's now getting so late. But we can do Florida, right? You've curated Florida, Albert?
I did, and that last one, we could just play some video. So out of the 3.
Okay. Okay. All right. Albert works hard, everyone. And, you know, I have mad respect for the work that Albert puts in. It's his not his only job.
Albert, thank you.
To be here every day. But he does it Wednesday through Friday. And Friday is the day that we traditionally did Friday Fabulous Florida. And, you know, we've been polite and haven't really mentioned much about Florida during the time that they've had to deal with so many of these tropical weather systems that have been so devastating. And it is now, we really offer it as a palate cleanser to you for the politics and the toxicity of the political conversations. They can get so unseemly, so dirty, so gross. Why not dip into a little news that is unseemly, dirty, and gross in a different way? This is Friday Fabulous Florida.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
You know, I always give women credit, just being a little more centered than dudes. But sadly, in Florida, and now I've been educated across the board, maybe I'm giving the fairer sex a little too much credit. And so we go to Ormond by the Sea, Florida.
That sounds like a nice place.
It does. It's a great name, Ormond by the Sea.
Yeah.
An 18-year-old arrested. She attacked a man with a hatchet.
That's not so pleasant.
Routine patrols. It's very old school. I kind of respect the old school nature of her attack. A deputy out conducting routine patrols was flagged down by a frantic man on Ocean Shore Boulevard in Ormond by the Sea. The man was yelling at cars. The victim telling cops that he was jumped at the beach. He was bleeding all over, according to the cops. Yeah. And apparently, he was there at the beach, and according to the police report, the woman was going to tie him up on the beach and have sex with him there.
Oh.
Apparently, the sex part was not really happening, but the hatchet part was. There they are.
I'm beginning to think that there was some type of meth involved.
Yeah. It definitely seems as though there are a lot of different factors that are going on here. It was a bit of chaos. The victim did manage, the victim there on the left, to run away and flag down a deputy. But he left behind a trail of blood, was taken to a nearby hospital. Deep cuts on his stomach, leg, and back.
Wow.
The two are out in the general public again, released on $5,000 bond just days after their arrest. But he probably still has the gashes of a beach plan and beach afternoon and evening gone wrong.
Is a hatchet heavy?
Not as heavy as an axe, so you can carry it with it, you know what I mean?
Hatchet's like a mini axe.
Yes, a mini axe. Well, in fact, I don't know why they don't call it a mini axe, actually.
Right.
I think that actually would be better branding.
Probably lighter than a machete, though. You know,
yeah.
In the scheme of Florida instruments of terror.
Yeah, right. It would be an even better story if it were a machete. By the way, you can vote for your favorite in the chat. We only have 2 more. Yeah. Florida man arrested for burglary after fleeing on a stolen golf cart with the stolen TV in hand. That's a very strong, And this is Grady Judd, I think. He is the county sheriff that we like so much because Polk County. Polk County man is behind. There's Grady. Yeah.
There's a reason this place is fun.
Yeah. 60-year-old Ronald Spiker of Fort Meade. Got to give the guy credit for still getting out there and stealing stuff when he's 60 years old.
He looks like the face of a ghost.
He does have a ghostly face. He's got that. Who was the guy in Lord of the Rings, Albert? You know, the little guy who was always
Gollum.
Gollum, exactly. That's exactly who I was thinking of. He's got a Gollumish look. Don't tell him that to his face. Burglary and to his Gollum-like face. Committed a burglary and attempting to get away on a stolen golf cart with the stolen goods. 60-year-old Ronald Spiker of Fort Meade arrested after he broke into a trailer on a small farm and stole a television. He reportedly loaded the TV onto the golf cart and fled the scene. He fled the scene.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Not much, Larry. We fled it. However, Spiker's escape was short-lived, Kim. Deputies with the Polk County Sheriff's Office apprehended him and discovered what in his possession? Anyone?
Methamphetamines.
Yes, methamphetamines. Yeah. Very well done. Yeah. He was charged with burglary, theft, and possession of meth. And
just a quick note on that. I will tell you that Sheriff Grady Judd was easily reelected into his office.
Wow.
Yeah, he wins a sixth term in office there in Polk County, Florida.
Very sweet. Well, he's one of our favorites. Yes, he's a tough guy, though. He's a right-winger, for sure. I mean,
what he's got going here is a situation.
Alligator caught sunbathing on a perfectly made bed floating down the canal that someone snapped a pic by after Hurricane Milton hit. Here it is, a perfectly made bed. Because of all the flooding, it ended up in a canal, and a Florida alligator is lying there on that bed. I mean, it's...
What?
Yes. If you're listening on the podcast, it might even be worth either Googling this story so you can see the picture, or you jump on our YouTube channel, of course, and you'll be able to see it.
It's never been anything like this.
It doesn't look that way.
A lot better than the riverbed.
This picture taken by Tracy Kirkpatrick of Suwanee spotted the jaw-dropping sight in a nearby canal, snapped this shot, and made a splash with the locals for having captured this moment. "I just come back from getting lunch," she said, "when I saw the gator. We'd been wondering whose perfectly made bed had landed in the canal. Well, it was the gator's waterbed," she said. And there you have it. And so it is on this Friday after the election. Florida never disappoints. Some things you can still count on. And we must vote for a favorite. Look at that. Those are the Polk County 2024 general election results for sheriff.
You see
Grady Judd with a decisive victory. 83%.
I'll call it 84%. 84% to 16%. Grady Judd wins re-election to a sixth term.
Wow.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
People love those press conferences, you know?
Yeah, he really does give great press conference. All right, quickly, you have to pick a favorite there among these three. The Florida man who is almost getting offed with the hatchet that was wielded by the woman who said she was going to have sex with him, didn't turn out that way. The golf cart theft, where the dude is arrested for stealing a TV and a golf cart and trying to flee the scene. And finally, the alligator caught sunbathing on a perfectly made bed floating down a canal a week after Hurricane Milton. We must pick a favorite. Quickly, I ask you, Kim.
It's also incredibly Florida, from golf
Kim, how are
carts
you?
to hatchet.
Yes.
I mean, Albert has really outdone himself this time, but I can't get over the alligator on the bed. I think that has to be the winner.
Very Florida. I completely agree. Albert, how about your fave, please? And how is it doing in the chat?
Yeah, Gator in bed is having a Grady Judd-like polling here. 77% of the vote. I have to go with the Gator in the bed. It's a perfectly made bed. It's like a perfect game.
I know, it's sick.
Albert, thank you.
It's sick how well made that bed is, yeah.
And this is why you make your bed in the morning. You never know when it's going to go sailing out the house.
That is, I agree. It's Gator in the bed. And that's Friday Fabulous Florida.
It's unanimous.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now here.
Want to use Mark Thompson?
Who's Mark Thompson?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank Thank you for being here. We are a 2-hour show, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. in the East. We're 11 to 1 in the West. And wherever you check in with us, we love having you on board. It's been a wild week in American politics. A lot of things happened that really were not anticipated. And on Fridays, a guy joins us who's been very generous to join us along the way in the lead up to this historic election. You can find him on TYT. You can see him at Trump rallies around the Kamala Harris camp. I mean, he's really done some pretty heavy lifting when it comes to reporting on this election. And now I'd love to get his reflections. Here's Michael Shure, everybody. Hey, Michael, what happened this week in the election that we've just lived through?
It's going to take a while to answer that question. But clearly, I think you saw the results of a man and a movement that has created a doubt about everything that is true in this country, created their own truths, and it worked because it got them to power. And I don't mean that, in a partisan way. I just mean it in a factual way. He was able to sow doubts about what the news media does and amongst people who have doubted all kinds of establishment. And he created his own avenues for media. And he, through those avenues, reached out to a lot of different Americans who were just as happy to leave and go find their facts at a place that wasn't really generating fact all the time. And not only that, he was able to appeal to young men of all colors and stripes in this country. He was able to peg an agenda onto the other side about trans and LGBTQ rights, but even further than that, how they want to change the landscape and allow children to change their sex at the drop of a hat. There was no Democrat running on that or saying that, but they were able to make people think that that was a big issue in this race. But there's more to come, and everybody who has a theory about it is pretty much right.
Yeah, I mean, there were many facets to what happened. It is remarkable that this guy, I was saying it in the first hour, who was campaigning with a billionaire who's a union buster and who really didn't have any specific plans. He just had a lot of insults. I understand, no tax on overtime or whatever. I mean, I don't know. Overtime may go away in a lot of places, but more to the point, apart from that, there was very little. I mean, drill, baby, drill. But and I think that's so interesting that you correctly, after you do it, I realize you correctly assign the attack of or assigning of a political lefty agenda that involved trans people and sending your kid to school as one gender and the child coming home as another gender. I thought the very effective ad that ran, I mean, it didn't land well with me because I know it's so absurd, but ran during a lot of sporting events, which I really felt the Harris campaign, I don't understand why there weren't more Harris ads. They had all that money for the spend. But the ad, anyway, to the point is...
But it ran, I think I'm going to finish your sentence here, but it ran during the World Series. It ran during NFL Sundays and Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football. And my God, there's probably Friday Night Football that it ran. And so it was targeting men. And this was also, this was an African-American woman running for president, and that was a big part of this too.
Well, I would say this: the spot I'm thinking of was she wants to spend your tax dollars on gender reassignment surgeries for prison inmates who are here illegally. Wrapped up in that one spot is everything.
She. Trans, prison, illegal. Boom.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean, it is. But we shouldn't gloss over that. This was the repudiation of a black woman, and it was at the hands of a lot of people who are not clearly ready to vote for that. There was unquestionably there is sexism and there is racism, and it came out in this election. But the Democrats would be foolish to think that that was the only reason. They have to do a different kind of outreach on message. There are successes that you did not hear about, and in fairness to Vice President Harris, In real fairness to her, she had 3 months to run a presidential campaign. That is an insanely small amount of time. In the UK, that's an eternity. Here, it is not, because the other side had already been established and they already had their roots in place. And the messaging on the successes of the Biden administration were muted because of what I said earlier, because of they didn't try and do it enough, and I think they're going to realize that, but also because the facts with quotes around them that other people were getting on this election were not facts, and they weren't being repudiated in real time.
Right, and I've said on the show before that repudiation in real time really should have happened. I mean, to me, you could knock that stuff down. To be fair, and first of all, I made the point that you just made, which is I thought she did as well as you could do with the hand she was dealt. I mean, she got out there, she worked tirelessly, she tried to define herself, she tried to individuate. I mean, obviously that was a booted moment when she couldn't really answer what she would do differently. You could see her caught between allegiance to a president and a party, and also trying to express a difference in the future and in her policy future for America. But apart from that, I thought she did pretty well. It's just a sad fact, Michael, that I think the information machine on the right just is so much stronger. And the other thing, and I made this point
because it's not based in fact, and do Democrats and the party and a lot of the country have to change to go along with that and create their own facts? God, that would be terrible. But is it a losing battle to just keep relying on traditional ways of sharing fact and information? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that question. That's for somebody else.
Mars says, repudiation of a black woman, sexism, racism, wow, lazy. I think those are components. I think those are legit components in this election. I mean, I don't
know what's lazy about that. I mean, that's definitely part of it. There's no question that that's part of it. Does it mean that she could not have won, or that a black woman can't win in this country? Not at all. But that was part of the race this year. The 2024 election had that as a component. You had her opponent talking about it, saying, I'm not sure if she's black or South Asian. Is she really black? Oh, now she's black. She wasn't black before. It's talked about. It doesn't matter whether you think that is right or wrong or the chief reason. It's certainly a component of why Kamala Harris lost the presidency.
Yeah, and and I'm seeing it in the chat, those of you who think that may not be the chief reason, as Michael Shure just said, but I think it's a very reasonable take to suggest that was a component in the outcome. I think to push back at it any further reflects your own stubbornness on the right. I mean, my God, I think you have to know certain things about this country. And it's a weird place that we live, Michael, that we don't know so much about these people that we have so much, quote, data on. You know, we seem to slice the electorate in all these ways, and yet we end up surprised by stuff like this.
Yeah, it's true. And I get incensed when people just dismiss that as part of the reason, because it could be part of the reason why she won. It also doesn't mean that a white man would have won by saying that there was racism and sexism in this election. It's a pure fact that affected this race in some way. And I don't for a second think that there were a ton of other people who would have done better than Vice President Harris this time. But it certainly was part of it. And it's going to be part of it forever in the future of this country. When Barack Obama ran, when Jesse Jackson ran, whoever keeps running, when Cory Booker ran, they're always asked about racial identity, because when you're in a minority, that is part of the conversation. And, you know, for it will be for a long time, I would imagine.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because as the Democrats look ahead, assuming that there is another election in this country or whatever, and we've read all of these sort of dire narratives, some of which really make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe the essential disfigurement of government that will follow GOP domination and this alt-right vision of what government should be that really requires the dismantling of the, quote, administrative state, et cetera, will prevent another election. But assuming we have another election, where is the bench strength? Who can come in? I mean, I think of these figures like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and these were, really charismatic people who also who really had mad-ass skills in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be somebody with very powerful charisma. And off the top of my head, I don't know that person exists, but there are certainly very bright people and very charismatic people. They also have to be people that connect, as Bill Clinton did with white working class voters, as Bernie Sanders did with white working class voters. It's going to have to be that type, as Ronald Reagan did with white working class voters. And it's not just white working class voters, because Latino and black working class voters were part of the group that left the Democratic ticket this year. So it's going to have to be somebody like that. Off the top of my head, I don't have that magic person, but the charisma has to be powerful, maybe even more powerful than the message in this next election, which, is 4 years away, and the people are counting the minutes to it. But it's a long time, 4 years, and a lot is going to change in this country. A lot may change with the future President Trump too, in terms of his health, in terms of the job he does, in terms of, people say, oh my God, that they've got a rubber stamp for everything. Well, there are people that are going to be running against that administration from within their own party later too, that will have to be monitored to see how they split, because there are a lot of people who want to be president who are Republicans who are not J.D. Vance and don't want to see him ascend. So there's going to be a lot of tumult in that party. Not yet, and not for a couple of years, but you'll see it. And that will help probably define who the next Democrat to rise will be. I know that Gavin Newsom is a name that people talk about. He's got charisma, but I think that people will probably see Gavin Newsom as California and liberal and coiffed and all those things. And it's I would not immediately announce my intentions if I were Gavin Newsom. There are going to be a lot of names that come up, and names that you don't know right now. But it's going to have to be someone with powerful, really powerful charisma. And I think they're going to have to change some of the way the leaders in Congress, specifically Chuck Schumer, operate in the minority. They're going to have to be a lot tougher and angrier, and they're going to have to push back harder to get people inspired.
Try this on for size.
It won't fit.
The Democrats have
it'll be too small on me, I promise.
Democrats have a branding problem.
Yeah.
The party has a branding problem. And here's the branding problem. I touched on it last hour. You've got a president, and I kind of touched on it in just the beginning of this conversation, who really did step up for working people. Had the COVID relief plan, the transformational infrastructure plan that included negotiation on drug prices, capping the price of insulin, the tax credit for child care. He walked the picket line with workers in Detroit. Yet somehow Trump and the GOP is seen as the party of the populace, the party of the working man. So I think this is branding, because there are no facts to back it up.
Right. Well, it goes to what we were saying before. Branding is facts, how you represent yourself, and whether or not you want to use facts to do that or not. I think what we've also seen is the successes of the Biden administration in the modern age require a younger, more exuberant, more, I would say, out there president than someone who was older in the traditional mold of presidents who spoke to 3 newspapers and 3 networks and went to bed. That isn't real anymore, right? And I don't know when that went away, but it went away because of progress, because of social media, because of the way different people get their information. But you need somebody out there selling it. And while Joe Biden may have been a good president, part of being a good president is also selling your presidency. And he wasn't able to do that. He chose not to. They chose to protect him. He didn't do press conferences. It's super important to be out there, to be charismatic, to also be funny, to be somebody who has repartee with the press. There has to be a lot more contact with America for Democrats. And Harris fell short on that too in her short run for the presidency. I suspect as a president, she would have been a lot better at it, but as a candidate, she didn't really have time to do that.
The reality of the modern media age and the messaging age is just what you said. I mean, you've got to be out there all the time in all the different ways. I mean, Trump was an early adopter on Twitter with his mad-ass middle-of-the-night tweets.
Oh, no, Mark, let me interrupt you for a second. I went to Las Vegas, which I think you've been.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah. I went there and went to the Trump Hotel to cover Trump endorsing Mitt Romney. This was in 2012. And I asked Donald Trump on camera with a mic, I said, what does your endorsement mean? Why does your endorsement matter? Businessman, whatever. And he said, I got a lot of followers on Twitter. And the whole press gaggle, this was in 2012, kind of chuckled at that being important. Well, he had the last laugh. There's no question.
Poorly educated whites, says No Contendo, cannot stomach seeing a person of color, especially black people, elevated to the highest office. And USA was and is built on biases. Kamala Harris had college vote. Yeah, I think there are a lot of biases. Look, she didn't get that vote that you're talking about, the poor white vote, but she also didn't get a lot of other vote, as Michael has noted, Latino vote. The people who didn't show up for Kamala Harris are as noteworthy as the people who did show up for Donald Trump. I mean, women, you felt there, and you kind of, this is the Kool-Aid that I was drinking, was that they showed up in pretty big numbers midterms, and they would show up and vote for Kamala Harris in the general. I was tentative about it on this show. I wasn't sure of it, but I thought if she's going to win, I think it will be a repudiation of these very male-centric kinds of views of where women should be in society.
Yeah, I think we all fell for that. It wasn't just the midterms. It was special elections that happened. It was municipal elections in the off years. It really was a big part of what went into guessing here about who was going to be the president. Also, we always knew it was going to be a close race. We talked about it here, right? I mean, we talked about the fact that this was a close race and we didn't know which way it was going to go, and it remained close. I mean, it's not close because there was a sweep of the blue wall in all the states that he needed to win, but in those states it was also, it was close in most of them, it's just you have to rejigger what Democrats do, and it's going to be tough in the next couple of years to be able to do that. And I wouldn't, they do these autopsies, these post-mortems on what happened in an election. I wouldn't think too hard about the candidate and the message, and should they have gone to Wisconsin at the end instead of Philadelphia, all those things. Those aren't that, and Democrats tend to do that sort of thing. Both parties do. This is a massive look at the way they message and the way they brand and the way they take voters for granted. Both parties have done it in the past, and Democrats are the ones falling victim to doing it now.
Kim?
In looking at the post-mortem of the election, you get a sense of who voted for Kamala Harris and who didn't. Black ladies turned out for Kamala Harris bigly. White ladies, not so much. What happened to the white ladies? Were we not caring about our rights? Were we being too deferential to men? What happened to us?
It's hard to say. A lot of, pinning the woke agenda, the price of eggs, and the fallacy that we have open borders on the Biden administration is what brought down or what elevated Donald Trump more than brought down Kamala Harris. So identity politics wasn't everything, but for a lot of people, identity politics is super important. But there are lots of issues out there on which there was, you have to, when you're the vice president, it's why it's so tough to run as the vice president, even though you have an advantage because of your name recognition, is that you have to stick to your administration and the things that they did that were good, and not run from that. But she was in a very tough spot on Gaza, on immigration, on all of those things. And they did a good job of pegging everything that was wrong on her, right? I mean, when I would ask Trump voters if they give Mike Pence a lot of credit for, the 4 years of the Trump administration that they loved so much, they would say, no, hell no, hell no, hell no. But in fact, that's just the same as giving blame to Kamala Harris for the Biden vice presidents do nothing. So
those are wild moments when I watched that stuff that you did in the field. Randy says it's not just messaging. The Dems have some policy things to reconsider. Let me just speak quickly to that and see if you agree. I actually think on policy, the Democrats are pretty good. I mean, they cleaned up the economy. They did all that stuff I talked to you about in the transformational infrastructure package. I think they really reach out to the working class voters in a way that the Republicans do not. But as Michael Shure has noted, their ability to message what they're doing, to scream it from the rooftops as Trump does, that is just really sadly not there. And then, as Michael also mentions, the GOP they make crap up. I mean, just literally the stuff that was running in those campaign commercials is not true. So, so I don't think it's, they're Democrats, the policy things to reconsider. I don't know about that. But maybe Randy's right. I don't know.
I think everybody's right a little bit. I think Randy's right a little bit. I think that and if it's not actual policy, it's the way they prioritize things, the way they talk about things, what their toughness on policy, and standing up for the fact that, in fact, when there's no response machine on policy. So they could say, well, the infrastructure bill that all these Republicans voted for was a terrible bill, right? Well, the Republicans say, drill, baby, drill. We're drilling more than we have before. Border crossings are today far less than they were on the last day of Trump's presidency. Immigration, I think where Randy is right is they have to articulate. One of the things that Democrats always criticized about Republicans to good effect was when they would say Obamacare is bad, and they didn't have a plan. Right. And the same thing for Democrats. You have to have a plan. You have to have a policy. You have to have a response legislatively to the things that you are being criticized for. So I do think that in that case that they have to look at policy. But I think it's more prioritization of policy. Look, they were for the workers and they lost the workers. They fought for like hell for minimum wage and they lost workers because it wasn't perceived that they liked workers, the Democrats. I mean, these are absurd things that they didn't have a response for. So I do think it's messaging and branding, but Randy's right too. We're all right. I mean, there are lots of elements that everybody's saying that have to be put in there. But I do think at the end of the day, it's about how you present en masse as with charisma and individually with charisma.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I talk about charisma a lot on this show, and I really believe in it. And I'm sorry. And I talked about Trump with this weird, eerie charisma. I find him a super interesting guy to watch, even as I find his approach to life and to government completely loathsome. I do think that they made political hay of the immigration situation in really an amplified way, and it's a legitimate problem, but it's been a legitimate problem through the Trump presidency, through the Obama presidency, and through the Biden presidency. But Trump was right. Don't pass that bill, because I want to be able to run on and smear the Democrats on immigration. And he was right, because that moment, the transformative nature of that bill, that essentially was a GOP-authored immigration bill, that would have stolen headlines and stolen attention, that this crew is making progress on immigration, and Trump wanted to use that as a talking point.
And that didn't bother enough people either. That's the thing. People are not bothered enough by what is out there. There's this whole feeling that nothing matters. And it's hard to be talking, to what Randy's saying and to what you're saying, it's hard to be talking about policy when it seems like nothing matters, like the headlines matter, like the sound bites matter, but like labeling the other side matters. Well, it mattered in this election and it worked. And the Democrats have to learn a little bit about not just policy and messaging, but how to navigate this new environment, which they're clearly not able to do, and they need leadership, and they need a front person to lead them out of this. Martin Luther King was the civil rights movement, and one of the people who criticized the Black Lives Matter movement say they didn't have a king. They don't have somebody that can galvanize. They can galvanize around. Similar to Bernie Sanders, right? Does the progressive movement have the next Bernie Sanders? I think not right now. That person may and will emerge, certainly, but it's not. You have to, in this country, have somebody that can be the lightning rod. Trump was clearly an effective lightning rod, and the Democrats don't have that now.
Tell me what happened in down ballot races, because I think this is really, in the chat, I see it just all about Trump and Harris, and I get it. That was a bellwether. But down ballot races also really told us stuff, didn't it?
Yeah, they did. I mean, they tell you certain things, right? I mean, they tell you that there's an adherence to Donald Trump, that there are people that still ballot split, that Tammy Baldwin, a Democratic senator from Wisconsin, won her race. Tammy Baldwin happens to be an out homosexual as well, in a year where they were otherized in ways that they hadn't been in a while, as a group and lumped in with other groups. And so that means there was obviously ticket splitting, which we don't think we see a lot because most people are pretty tribal now. Same thing in Michigan with Alyssa Slotkin. Jackie Rosen it looks like she's going to win re-election in Nevada, and looks like Trump will actually end up winning Nevada by a little bit. So the down ballot races take a little while to decipher. Usually Americans like gridlock. They like when one house of Congress is in control of one group and vice versa. And so it takes a while to look at that. But in effect, people were saying that they want change, and they want they don't like the direction, that we always say right direction, wrong direction. And every year pundits say, well, this, that's an old model. People, the right direction, wrong direction thing doesn't matter like it used to. Well, people think this country is going in the wrong direction, largely because of the cost of gas and the price of eggs. And it was a wrong direction election because people who thought that all voted the other way.
And as you say, they tag whoever's in power with whatever their grievance is. I mean, it just is a fact.
Well, which we do. We all blame the coach, right? Fire the coach. We have remote controls. We change the channel if we don't like what's on, and we go to the next channel. It's the same thing that you see in politics, and it just takes a little longer because you have to wait 2 to 4 years in order to do that.
I talk about messaging because I feel as though most voters aren't people who get the alerts that we get all the time. I mean, my phone is pinging constantly with alerts from every major publication, even podcasts, these off the beaten track publications or Substacks. Most people aren't like that. They're just trying to, make it to the end of the day, pick up the kids for, soccer practice or it's a cliche to say it, but it's really true that people are low information voters, and that's not a damning of them. It's a fact. They have a lot of other stuff that's getting in the way of, sorry, I can't be up on whatever the latest thing that, the Democrats said.
Right.
And so the messaging I come back to, because you have to be able to communicate to those people who are really they may hear it from Joe Rogan or, a Theo Vaughn or whomever. I mean, that really is kind of a place that has to be viewed as a real legitimate vessel for information.
And we live in a society now where people vent, and people, from Karens on up, people are not afraid to say what's pissing them off, except for Democrats, right? If Democrats are pissed off at Israel, right? And say you're pissed off at Israel, say you want to do more, say you want to take, it doesn't mean that every Jewish voter in America is going to abandon you, because a lot of what you stand for appeals to Jewish voters. It doesn't mean that every Jewish voter has Israel as their number one issue. And also, I'm not saying that decided this election, but in general, if you're pissed off at something, an era where people say that they're pissed off, show it and be pissed off about it. And the joy that emanated from the Harris-Walz campaign, I love that. I love that. It didn't work, right? Most people don't like it now. I hate that most people don't care for that. I hate that, but I'm not going to change that. So go in the other direction and get pissed off a little bit. I never saw this candidate pissed off. I never saw, it's like when they go high, we go, or when they go low, we go high. Well, I think Democrats might have to start going low a little bit. And it pains me to say that, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's you're just not going to win the game with this playbook.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mark. Correct. It's not going low to get pissed off. It's just saying what you believe. Going out there and not being afraid. Don't be afraid of X vote or what this thing is going to say. Because in the end, if you're doing the right thing and your policies are sound on things that are important to everyday Americans, and unemployment is down and inflation never reached the places where they said it was going to be, and you responded to criticism about immigration, and you're able to articulate that, then you're going to win, or you're going to lose in a way that at least you do it having tried to fight the battle. I don't feel like Democrats fought a battle this time.
I do think that a plain-spoken communicator like Bernie Sanders with a real message to real people, gosh, I think Bernie Sanders, he's still magnificent in the way he communicates. You know, and he, in my judgment, could have been just a little bit tweaked and probably even won that election. I know that Hillary was clearly on track to
yeah, and he's a little untweakable like Trump. I mean, some of these people you can't really tweak. You know,
yeah, that's true. No, he was definitely untweakable.
Yeah,
but somebody said something here, and then I'll let you go. And I kind of thought it was interesting, and of course, it leads back to, and I'm sure you're going to say, yeah, this is part of it too. Nessa Bug says Harris ran a good campaign, and feel if Biden had stated earlier not to run, I think Harris would have won. I don't know about winning, but definitely the fact that there was no primary, that Biden, didn't follow his one-term presidency plan, that did change this thing dramatically.
Well, except that he did. I'm always going to credit President Biden for leaving the race. It's really hard to be president of the United States and say, I'm not going to run. Very few have ever done it. And I think that he did not see, he's still the only person who's beaten Donald Trump. And he did not see that anybody else could at that point. It was hubris. It was annoying. And he did the right thing and got out. Had he gotten out a little earlier, maybe they're right. I don't think that anything that I saw on Tuesday told me that the Democrats were going to win this race, no matter when Biden left or if Biden stayed or if Michelle Obama ran or anything. The dynamics of this race and the Trump machine, the way it worked, in retrospect now, because we can do that on Tuesday, I don't think it would have changed very much.
Yeah, sadly,
we'll never
agree.
That,
I'd agree. Yeah.
And Josh Shapiro wouldn't have won Pennsylvania. We can, that this was not an election about Josh Shapiro having been the correct choice. I don't know that he would or wouldn't have, but clearly to me, the country wasn't going to elect Kamala Harris.
That's right. Although, listen, I will say this wasn't it wasn't a sweeping victory a la Barack Obama's electoral college victory. You know what I mean, Michael Shure?
No, not yet. But I mean, he painted a blue wall red, and that has its effect, right? I mean, so I agree, and I said it earlier. If you drill down and you see how close all these races were, it was a close election in that way. But 10 million fewer people voted for Kamala Harris, and don't quote me on that, but it's approximate, than voted for Joe Biden last time. So something was lost. And that's why I don't think this was an election that would have been decided by, I never think elections are decided, that, by vice presidential candidates, but certainly not this one.
We need our reality game show host fake billionaire to represent all that is holy in future elections.
Yeah.
We definitely need something for...
Ken Jennings.
Ken Jennings, 2028.
Yeah.
Michael, love your takes. Thank you for holding our hand, and look forward to next time.
Mark, I shaved. No mention of the fact that I shaved.
I know, it was weird. I saw something that I just didn't recognize, and it's, of course, your face.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll cover
you don't have to go out and stand there and 10 below anymore.
Back up, I think.
Yeah, stand below and ask
There's
people.
There's never
why
been anything
voting.
like this.
Yeah, it was really something.
Anyway. Let's work on our drops too. I think it's time to edit out.
And this is their new hoax.
Yeah, goodbye.
You want to get rid of all those? All right. Yeah. Here's the never seen anything like it that we use now is.
I've never seen anything like it.
That's new. I mean, he just said that in the last few months. You never seen anything like it. You're going to get a lot of those. But Tim Walz drops are going to have to get rid of.
I've tried to do the best I can.
I think that
he did a very good job. He was
did.
Fine. Yeah.
He did. I don't know. Anyway, good times, Michael Shure. Thank you, Michael Shure, everybody.
Where was a good time?
Yeah, exactly. Where?
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Jada had nothing to do with it.
Hey, Mark. It's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
That's pure speculation.
We're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
I love it when you're angry.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess. Where are my weed smokers at?
What do you think I'm going to say to you?
Don't talk to me that way.
That was very inappropriate.
That's not fake. That's real. Seriously, what the
I love it. It was great. I loved it.
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
It's fantastic.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
The science is ridiculous.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It is our Friday show. Thank you for being here. 2 glorious live hours on YouTube. And then we go up as an audio podcast across all major podcast platforms, from Spotify to iHeartRadio to Apple Podcasts. So thank you for being here. Thank you for smashing the like button, which costs you nothing, does help us in the algorithms of YouTube. Somebody commented to me, speaking of algorithms and just the way we're served information, they were saying, you know, Mark, the algorithms just feed me more of what I'm getting. So if I watch your show, then I'm fed other stuff that sort of quacks the same way. And that's the silo that everybody lives in. So if you're a Fox News channel viewer and you like right-wing stuff, you're just going to get fed more and more right-wing stuff. And that's true on TikTok and across all these social media platforms. They want to give you what you like from the buffet of information that you typically eat.
And the more you click on it, the better you feel, right? Vindicated in your beliefs.
A good friend of mine said, she's a big TikToker. Mm-hmm. She said, I cannot believe that Kamala Harris didn't win. Yeah. She said, my feed is filled with Kamala Harris stuff. It's just all convincing from all of these different people, and they make good arguments and explain things, and I just can't believe it. And of course, that's the information silo that she lives in.
Michael Shure was talking about a lack of charisma from Harris, how, to win these things, you need to be the cool kid, make the people laugh. And I saw that in Kamala Harris. Like, she had a sense of humor. She was able to laugh at herself. She went on Saturday Night Live there toward the end. And I just felt like that was something that was really relatable. It surprised me too.
Yeah. I mean, again, the libs, we all live in our bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said on this show, and I say it again, and Michael kind of hinted at it or said it, and that is the Democrats and the left can't be afraid of going on shows like, I said it over and over again, there's nothing to fear with Joe Rogan. If you're not afraid of 60 Minutes, but you are afraid of Joe Rogan, then you've got a problem, because Joe Rogan is a much easier conversation than 60 Minutes. I mean, it was crazy arithmetic, and I get it. The idea is, well, he's a misogynist. He promotes anti-vax theories. He promotes conspiracy theories, and I don't want to legitimize him by being there. But sadly, you may, on some level, have to break bread with people who really are part of that bizarre world that does have huge audience. And Bernie Sanders goes on Fox News Channel. I just use Bernie as an example. There are others. Pete Buttigieg is the most kind of the younger version. He's not afraid to go on Fox News Channel. And you could say, well, Fox News Channel, all they are is a propaganda arm of... Yeah, you're right. That is all they are. But you need to go on there so you can reach those people. Now, there might be a quality on some of those shows that are just getting tossed to the lions, but I still feel as though the new age Democrat or left-leaning, center-left, however you want to do it, kind of person, however you want to calculate it, who does want to be in party politics, you're going to have to do these things and not be afraid of them. I like shows that have people from the right debating people on the left. The algorithms don't seem to be able to figure that out. Yeah, yes and no. The algorithms are pretty good. I don't know. But somebody just on that note said, I mean, I get a lot of this from people like Mars and Delwood. And I mean, you know, the right wants to hear more right-wing views. And we had our right-wing guy from Florida on, and we're going to have him on again. I think he's on next week. So the idea somehow that we have our regular contributors because they're really smart people. And smart people aren't always right, but smart people are worth listening to. And then you can say, as you do, that's one of the great things about this forum. Hey, I disagree. He totally ignores this. How can he say this when such and such? Fine, say that. But the idea somehow that these people aren't worth hearing because they were wrong about the election? Come on, man. That's just absolutely a weak argument. So please don't send me any more of that. Mars, Delwood, I have, you know, Mars was borderline yellow card today with some of the crap he was saying. And I actually like these people, as you know, Kim. I'm an advocate for many of these people who are in our chat and are kind of stirring the pot and represent opposing views. You could even call them troll adjacent. I defend them, and I usually allow it. But I don't get a chance to look at the chat a lot, but I glanced down and I saw something that I thought was borderline. It was really insulting to Michael, and I thought that was.
Did I miss it? I'm sorry.
No. But it was I almost yellow carded it myself. But all I'm trying to say is, these disparate opinions, opposing opinions, differing opinions of all sort are welcome here. We will have a right-winger on next week, as I say, and I would say try to treat these people respectfully, you know, even as you think something's absurd or it makes you angry or whatever. I get it, but I feel as though we have a good dialogue here. And you'll note, this is the last thing I'll say, when somebody's making an argument and it represents sort of a left-of-center argument, I'll come over to the other side and go, well, what about, though, the notion that, and I'll try to balance the argument. Always I do that. So I think you get that on this show. And I'm sure, you know, I appreciate all of the constructive thoughts on people you should have on and all the rest, and we will follow up on that. But there was a lot of that. Why don't you have, what's his name, Professor, is it Lichtman with his 13 keys of, you know, he's never been wrong, Mark. He's been right 9 out of 10 times. How about, when are you going to have Professor Lichtman on? When are you going to have Professor Lichtman? My feeling was, dude, he's everywhere. I don't need to have him on my show. I'm tripping over Professor whatever with his 13 keys on my way to other stuff. If you want to see him, there are a million places you can see him. And so that's why I didn't have him on. By the way, how do those 13 keys work out? Okay. Now, but again, I don't blame him for that. I mean, but man, he had a moment. He was like, you know, he had his 15 minutes plus. Kim, I'm sorry. Unless you have a headline or two, I've got to get on to Michael Snyder. Do you have anything?
I do want to tell you, there is a lot of news, but nothing people probably haven't heard. I don't have any breaking stories, except that, and this is kind of interesting, a third attempt on Trump's life. And this one has to involves one arrest. They still are looking for others, but the Justice Department is pursuing charges against 3 people, they say, allegedly plotted to assassinate President-elect Trump on behalf of the country of Iran. So this is what law enforcement officials are telling multiple news outlets in the United States today. The men have been charged with murder for hire. So 2 of them are under arrest. One of them is still at large, presumably in Iran. And a court document says the men were hired by someone they met in prison. So they're calling that a third attempt on his life.
Wow.
I do want to tell you that this report, however many it may be, is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore.
Oh, yeah.
We're so grateful that they are with us on Fridays to support the news and the Mark Thompson Show. And they have had a great season full of I Love Lucy grape stomps. The fun is not over at Tenuta Vineyards, and the wine is still flowing. It is such good wine. The Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red is amazing. The Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio, it's, hey, Which one of you is Mark Thompson, Pinot Grigio? Check them out. The website is tenudawinery.com. Rich's email address is rich@tenudavineyard.com. And you can call or you can email and say, smash it with your iron rod, and you get 10% off across the board, whether you're going to a great fun event out at the winery or whether you're buying wine. 925-699-4576. Smash it with your iron rod is the phrase that pays, and you'll get your Mark
The phrase
Thompson
that pays, everybody.
10%
Yeah.
off.
We love our
And that's
Tenuta
it.
people.
Yeah,
Right
we
on,
do.
Kim.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. Thank you for that, Kim. I really do appreciate it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So, in addition to Tenuta and all of you, I appreciate all the support, the thumbs up, the sharing the show. That's how we grow the show. It's a weird thing that's happened after the election. We get a drop-off in subscribers. It's amazing because all our subscribers have continued to increase, and all of a sudden there's a drop-off. I mean, it's not a dramatic thing, but you probably heard other people talk about it. Somebody told me that David Pakman spoke about a bunch of subscribers just checking out, et cetera. So I appreciate all the ways you share the show. I think one of the things that's really cool, because I did see this in our chat, like, for example, David K. Johnston here says, You Matter says, I can't wait until Tuesday to see how David is doing. Yeah, David K. Johnston was on with us on election night, and first thing he said is, hey, I was wrong. He said, I really didn't think America would do this, and they did. So we'll talk more about it, but I think our experts all owned, however they miscalculated and sort of really didn't see the electorate in the way that clearly the electorate was breaking. West Theory with a $20 super chat says, I think cost of goods, immigration, and tax-free tips and no tax on overtime all had play in the Trump win and the misunderstanding of transgender issues. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about this no tax on overtime thing. I'll just say this. I think overtime may go away. I think in a lot of places. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing from people who are approaching HR and asking for their overtime, talking about when does the no tax thing start. HR is telling them, hey, guess what's going to start? No overtime.
Yeah.
We just pay you, for the additional hours. That's it. So,
I was on the Mark Thompson Show fan discussion page that Wes set up on YouTube, and he wrote something about remember the busing and the flying of migrants to different states?
Sure.
In New York, they were filling a school gym with them, and the students had to do remote learning. And Wes was saying that, for the first time, these non-border states saw and felt the impact of immigration on their communities, and that was something that we've never seen before. I thought that was an interesting idea, that states like, that aren't like California, Arizona, and Texas we're finally seeing it as well. Maybe it played a role. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it did. I think it was an effective, very effective thing that they did.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Luis says, stop with Rogan, Mark. None of those bros listening to that message would ever vote for her. Just be a performance attack
performance attack clown, and America will love you.
Thank you. Yeah. You may be right. I mean, you may be right. I'm not saying it would have made a difference. As I said, I don't think she would have won because of it, but I think that you can't be afraid of going into these places. I mean, you can't be afraid of going into a podcast environment where 50 million people are going to hear you. I mean, that matters. That's not nothing, I had no time to send you a salty email, says B.O., but can we discuss your election special remark about all Biden's great legislation? Just don't see that. Well, I've detailed some of it for you today. You don't? I mean, I don't know. Do you think that there shouldn't be a cap on insulin prices? I mean, he got that done. Do you think that there shouldn't be a negotiation around prescription drug prices? He got that done. Not for as many as I would have liked, but he did get it done. You think there shouldn't be a child tax care credit? He got that done. Okay, I mean, I don't. What do you want me to say? He actually made huge environmental strides, which I care about. So, sorry, B.O. I think there are a lot of things that and look, it's controversial. And it might have cost him politically or cost the Democrats politically, but the student loan thing, that was big. That debt forgiveness there, that was big. And again, it might have cut against him, but don't say he didn't get anything done. Raskin is on YouTube. It says no contendo with BTC. Who was that? That's Is that the guy in Florida?
I don't know who BTC is.
It's a critic 45 Daily. Sorry, no Contendo's got the best abbreviations of anybody who's in our chat, and I'm sorry, sometimes I don't. And sometimes it's the moment, and later I'll go, of course why didn't I get that abbreviation? I'm such an idiot. Kamala lost because Biden had no balls. You can't tell us democracy's at stake and not pack the court. It made it seem so insincere, says DJ. Well, just so we can be clear about this, because, I feel the court should be, I would say, expanded, to be polite about it, not packed. But okay, you can't do it on your own. Can't do it just as a presidential fiat. You need Congress for that. You need Congress for it.
Executive order. You've got immunity now.
No,
just
but
do whatever
it doesn't.
you want. Carte blanche.
No, but
steamroll the process, Mark.
Okay,
that's it.
All right. Okay. All right. And on January 7th, MoFlo says Trump called for the Capitol rioters to be fully prosecuted. Now he calls them hostages. When the federal government forces Texas to deal with illegal aliens, go figure that Texas wants to secede. Yeah, I mean, that might be it too. I don't know. Mark, you were missing out on a huge cash grab. You need to impose tariffs on all show contributions. I haven't even hit anybody on supporting the show financially today, but I do appreciate the Patreon and PayPal folks and all of you who contribute, like Luis is doing with a super chat or a super sticker. Wes Theory for the $5 super, speak of it, and it happens. Wes for the $5 super sticker. Thank you.
Big shout out.
Deputy of Government Efficiency, Dogecoin regarding Elon self-dealing. Yeah, this is amazing. And, crypto is off the charts right now because of the ascendance of Elon, I think, in part, and how this administration is going to view the crypto world. A GOP peaceful transfer of power equals no transfer of power, says Luis. So I have this real quick, and then I want to get to Michael. 415 Steve, shout out to the 415 and all my 415ers, because I really do love everybody in the Bay Area.
Big
That's where this show started. With a $50 super chat. The MTS show rocks. Great guest, great info. You guys are a beacon of light. We are stronger together. Thank you for that. Sometimes it's the criticism and the bad stuff that sticks to you, especially me with my psychologies. And I'm always looking for, legitimate ways in which I can improve things. So it's great to get an attaboy. Thank you for that. Hassan with a $10 super chat says, more numbers. Kamala overperformed Biden in North Carolina, Wisconsin, and equaled him in Michigan and Pennsylvania. Trump overperformed her in battleground states. Kamala underperformed in blue states, and Trump was same as 2020 in blue. Well, and his voters turned out for him in 2020, if that's right. I haven't seen all of those numbers to know. Put Rudy in Rikers and see people that he can see the people that he put in Rikers Island. Good stuff. I've got to stop. I got to get to Michael Snyder. I'm sorry. I got to get to Michael Snyder. So thanks everybody for all the ways that you participate, super chats and super stickers and all the rest. And now I got to...
The Mark Thompson Show.
The end of the week brings him in. He knows it all when it comes to entertainment, movies, music, streaming. He comes and goes on a rainbow. How about it for the wonderful culture blaster, Michael Snyder. Hello, sir. Hey. Yes. Oh, I've got to turn your mic on. Thank you. Now, go ahead. Okay.
An attempt to stifle this voice that reaches out every Friday at the end of the show. And speaking of the end of the show, it's already a minute past the end of the show.
Is
well
it
done.
Really?
It's 101. I don't know where we are.
Give me your best 5 minutes.
You're killing me, Mark. Speaking of killing me, like many, I hoped our long national reality TV generated nightmare was almost over, but it looks as if an even worse one is about to begin. I'm just grateful to live in the free Republic of California.
Yeah.
I don't know for how much longer we're going to be able to live our lives. But meanwhile, we're witnessing the acquisition of the most consequential and treacherous get-out-of-jail card in history, I think.
Yeah, it is true, Michael.
It's just crazy. And, if I'm a little down today, that's probably the reason why. But let's see if we can lift some spirits or at least get people to look at something over the weekend that will take them away from the horrors of horror. That's right. The first movie we're covering is a horror movie.
Of course, you love your horror. Hang on a second. I need my my coffee, and I'm very excited to be able to get it. Hold on a second.
Yeah, down the hatch.
This is Coachella Valley coffee, Michael. You got to get hip to. Oh, you do. You drink it when you come here.
I'm sipping coffee from your green room right now.
Yeah, that's good.
And it is Coachella. Best. It is truly the best coffee I have ever tasted. And speaking of your beautiful harp music.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, there it is. Talk about Mark Thompson show, Time Wasters, the harp music. My friend Jill could record you a dedicated harp glissando if you want.
Oh, whatever.
She has a beautiful harp.
Glissando is a ding word.
Trained classical harpist. Okay, down to business. Rather than balk at aging out of his trademark, sheepish, floppy-haired, stammering leading man rom-com roles,
yes.
Hugh Grant made a really smart career choice by taking on and really deftly executing more unsavory parts, playing against type, I guess. He was a criminal in Guy Ritchie movies. He's the husband of questionable virtue in the HBO miniseries The Undoing, and now he's a strange, sinister, and apparently a brilliant man named Mr. Reed in the canny and subtle horror movie Heretic, wherein two young female Mormon missionaries arrive at an isolated ramshackle house on a dreary afternoon, and they're brought there by a request from the man who lives there. And even though they have been told to only enter a room if there is a woman present as some kind of protection, he suggested his wife is busy baking a blueberry pie and they should come in, and he'd like to speak with them about the Church of the Latter-day Saints. But in fact, what he really wants to do is something I don't want to get into great depth about because I don't want to ruin people's enjoyment of the film, but it's a very smart look at belief, religion, faith, and other things as seen through the lens of psychological horror. And this guy, he's a piece of work. The women that play the two Mormon missionaries are very, very good. And one of them actually is a pop singer, if I'm not mistaken, and that would be Sophie Thatcher. And they tagged the movie with a performance by her, and the other young woman, Chloe East, is also good. They're Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton. And by the way, Topher Grace shows up in a small role as a Mormon elder, and you can barely recognize him, but I have to say this thing drew me in. And I also want to point out that it might be the best work from the co-writer directors Scott Beck and Brian Woods. I think it might be their best work, and they, in fact, co-wrote A Quiet Place, the post-apocalyptic sci-fi horror movie. And they've done a couple of other things. One clinker called The Science, it was the 65 with Adam Driver. I didn't particularly like it, but Beck and Woods really nailed this thing.
Now, this is a horror movie, though.
It is. It's a psychological horror film, and there are some grisly moments, but it's not a blood-splattered situation. And it's more about about him manipulating these two women and also discussing issues of life, death, whether religion has any real serious underpinnings. It worked for me.
So they're not these boo moments like the sudden oh my God.
There's a couple of jump scares, but nothing that will jack your blood pressure into any kind of treacherous level. I did think that it was good, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. Heretic is in theaters, and that's wide across this great nation of ours, or this once great nation, if you're like me and a little leery of where things are going.
What else do you have? A great culture blaster.
A better movie than that, I thought, is a movie called Small Things Like These. And it is grounded by a subtle and brilliantly shaded performance by Cillian Murphy, who you know as Tommy Shelby in the absolutely unmissable TV crime drama and family saga Peaky Blinders. And Murphy has done a lot of great work over the years. And here he gives a depth and heart to Small Things Like These as I guess we'd call him a coal merchant. He's a coal salesman, Bill Furlong, and he lives in an Irish town. And this is Christmas in 1985, with all that period implying. And while there and delivering coal to a local convent / laundry, he discovers a young girl who's seemingly in peril. And what this movie is, at its heart, is a very provocative look at the horrifying true circumstances of Ireland's Magdalen laundries. And these were crosses between convents, asylums, and I'll put this in quotes, homes for unwed mothers that were run in documented cruel manner by Roman Catholic nuns. And these girls were indentured servants as they worked in these laundries. And this happened, actually, I'll be honest with you, it started in the 1800s, and it kept going until the 90s. And they were meant to be reformatories, if you will. And is that a word? Of course,
yeah,
that is.
Absolutely.
And these women, of course, had given themselves to men and were apparently damned to hell unless they, I guess, worked off their sins at these laundries. I have seen documentaries and I have seen other docudramas about the Magdalen laundries. This is adapted from a highly decorated novel by Claire Keenan. It was directed by a man named Tim Mylance, and it was written by a screenwriter by the name of Enda Walsh, and it is a very good movie. It's not big in terms of its scope. It's just very personal and very wrenching in a lot of what it deals with.
I'm seeing from the movie poster that you so generously provided that Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Cillian Murphy himself, and Alan Maloney were all producers on this film.
They were. This is, it's an important story that needs to be heard and told. And Cillian Murphy is just a wonderful actor. He's done such a wide variety of roles, and this is his most recent and one of his best performances, I think. And
he likes small things like these. Moving on, Michael, please.
Well, sure. We'll do what we can. We'll zip through the rest of them. We'll play lightning round here, Mark, because
lightning round.
You pushed me against the wall. Okay,
right.
Let's start with Christmas Eve in Miller's Point. It is the first Christmas-themed movie I have encountered this year, and it's a modest but very wry look at an extended family gathering in suburban Long Island during the early 2000s. And that means some needle drops from the era. And it looks at the various generations that are represented in this clan and how they approach the holiday in different ways. And it goes on a bit long, like some holiday celebrations, but it does get off site in a way when a couple of the teenagers in the bunch ditch the home celebration to join their peers in some rambunctious mischief.
Is this a quirky comedy, Michael?
It is a warm slice of life, and it.
I might like warm slice of life.
I think you might really like it. I do think so, and I also think that it does a lot with a little. It's the work of Tyler Taormina, who both co-wrote the script and directed. And Michael Shure is in it. He's one of the producers, and he plays a local, Long Island cop. Who is keeping an eye on things on Christmas Eve. And there are moments that really resonated for me. For instance, at one point, the family, in the middle of their celebration, go out to the street because they know like the local fire department or someone will come zooming by with a trail of beautifully decorated and, streaming light bedecked trucks and cars. It's the annual, Christmas supersonic parade. So they all run out for that. Hey, it's time for that. There are moments that made me think of how people go to candy cane lanes and what have you during the holidays. Yeah. I thought it was sweet. Is it a great movie? It's okay. But I have to say that it's a nice way to get into the season.
All right, I like it. All right, Christmas Eve in Miller's Point is in theaters?
Yes, it is indeed in theaters. And if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, it will eventually make its way to streaming.
Well, it'll eventually make it, but it's not there now.
Sooner than you think, probably, because it's a very limited rollout for the movie.
I see.
So, I don't say hedge your bets, but, I'm sure it's going to be a fun thing to watch at home. All right, on to a movie from France that is actually not a French movie so much as a kind of cool and thoughtful science fiction movie. It's called Meanwhile on Earth, and I thought this was beautifully done. It's about a young woman played by Megan Northam, and she is dealing with the loss of her brother, Frank, who was an astronaut, and when he went on his first mission, he disappeared, and no one knows what became of him. But she begins getting, at night, while looking up at the stars, sort of his voice in her head, and it motivates her to try to figure out a way to bring him back. But the question is it him? Is it an alien force? what is getting to her. Is it her own psychological problems?
Sure.
It's...
But what was it? What is it?
Well, to say that would be to undermine the movie. This is so you don't want to watch the film, or you don't have to watch the film. No. This is a very good and atmospheric and thoughtful science fiction film, and it all elements of mystery here, and also family trauma. And I think it's very, very well done, and it's kind of not like any sci-fi movie I've seen in a while, maybe ever.
You like it. Meanwhile on Earth,
I thought it was solid, and it is also what we like to say in limited release right now.
In theaters, all right.
Okay, by the way, thumbs up to Jérémy Clapin, who was the writer-director of Meanwhile on Earth.
Very nice.
Okay, now some... I would call them guilty pleasures. These are those movies we joke about this. Not terrible. Michael Snyder, The Mark Thompson Show. All right, so let's start with a movie called Elevation. We'll just zip right through these.
Yeah.
It is more science fiction, and it is about what appears to be some kind of invasion. Is it from below the Earth? Is it from outer space? We don't know, but we establish the situation 3 years into whatever this problem is, as monsters are terrorizing and killing people, and the only safe harbor, and it's not a harbor, is in the heights of the mountains above 8,000 feet. The monsters don't venture there for some reason, and no one knows particularly why.
What do you mean for some reason? We all know that mountain areas are a good place to go to get away from monsters.
Well, perhaps, but they have like a border that they set up around their community, and they know that these creatures will not cross the border and get higher than 8,000 feet.
Okay.
So it's the Rocky Mountains, and we meet the always wonderful Anthony Mackie as a single dad, a very bulky scientist played by the lovely Morena Baccarin, and a third friend who is involved, a young woman, and they're all hoping to help the single dad's son, who has a breathing issue and needs oxygen filters that are running out, and the only place to get them is below 8,000 feet in Boulder, Colorado, nearby Boulder. And so there's a mission that Dad and the two women undertake despite the presence of these monsters.
Wow.
And I thought
Do we see the monsters? What kind of monsters are they?
They're monsters. And actually, okay, full disclosure, my buddy Bill Bose was the effects guy on this thing. He was in charge of special effects, and he did a great job. The creatures are really kind of creepy and cool. And this is not a great film. I got to make that clear. But I actually
do they get the stuff for his daughter, Michael?
You keep asking me to reveal the actual nuts and bolts as if you just don't care about people enjoying these things, looking at these things and enjoying them.
What about for those of us who are not going to go see it? We
need
to know.
We'll talk about it later.
I'm worried about the child getting the breathing equipment.
I really can't reveal that. But George Nolfi, the director, and the screenwriters, including John Glenn and Jacob Roman, it's okay. I mean, I think home video is the way to go with this thing, and it is in fact released wide today, and it's not bad, but it's not game changing. Let's put it that way. Elevation, decent. As these War of the Worlds sort of things go, but the question is, are they coming from below?
Sure.
Are they coming from above? We don't know.
Those are the questions I was asking.
All right. Okay. Weekend in Taipei is the work, or at least a production, and co-screenwriting credit goes to this guy, of Luc Besson, the great pop culture generating French filmmaker who made things like The Fifth Element and La Femme Nikita, and movies of that ilk. And he co-authored this film, Weekend in Taipei, and he has his new action hero in the embodiment of Luke Evans, who people might know here in the States as Gaston in the live-action Beauty and the Beast. And here he plays kind of a hard-nosed, I guess we'd call him agent of sorts of the DEA, John Lawler. And he is brought back to a former haunt, Taipei in Taiwan, where an ex-lover lives as the wife of a drug lord, and she has a young son, and there's a kind of a romantic triangle that is kind of implicit here, and it's action plus. There's your chases, your battles, your fights, your hand-to-hand combat, and it's very entertaining.
This is a good versus evil type movie, isn't it?
Well, sort of. And
vanquishing the mob, the drug
lord is a vicious
he evil?
bastard.
Yeah.
The vicious bastard, played, by the way, by Song Kang, who's a pretty cool Asian actor. And the young woman who plays the object of both of their desires, obviously John, the DEA agent, and the drug lord, is Lun Mei Gui, and she's pretty damn good, too. There's a moment at the very beginning, I'm not telling tales out of school here, where she is considering buying a very fancy car, and she's window shopping on her way to the car dealership, and she looks garbed like Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and they're playing Moon River, and I'm saying, you're obviously, this is Luc Besson, putting a pin in pop culture references. It is not a great film, but it is terribly entertaining. I kind of was caught up in it.
A lot of screeching and shooting and chases.
Yeah, there's that kind of stuff, and are they going to be caught? Are they going to survive? What's the deal with the kid?
Do they survive, Michael?
Will your family survive? That's the big question. Watching this thing.
Do they catch the drug dealer at the end? Or not?
Let's just wrap things up with Black Cab, which is a modest little horror film. Not great, but it does feature the very talented and often funny Nick Frost, who is Simon Pegg's comrade in comedy, in things like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz.
Sure.
They have done a lot of work together. Well, on his own, Frost plays the driver of a black cab who picks up a young woman and her abusive boyfriend.
This does not look like a comedy.
It is not a comedy. And even though this cab driver, played by Frost, is kind of seems like a fun-loving guy, he is, in fact, I'm going to invoke the word again, sinister. He might have a little more in common with Hugh Grant's character in Heretic than we would care to have. Again, not great. It's sort of a very limited scope here because a lot of it takes place in the cab and the environs on a trip ostensibly to their home from this night out, but things go a little cock-a-hoop.
Ostensibly is a ding word.
And director Bruce Goodison, it's okay. Frost was one of the screenwriters on it. I didn't think it was great. It, in fact, I think was made for British television, and it's getting a kind of a limited theatrical release here, and it will be available on Shudder, the horror-themed streaming service, very, very soon, if not today. In fact, that's the only place you can see it. And it's called Black Cab. It's okay. I mean, I wasn't blown away by it, but it wasn't terrible.
Well, I'm excited to, am I in a recap situation, or do you want to mention The Diplomat Season 2 is supposed to be really great?
Oh, it's really something else. I know
people love
Kim
The
is
Diplomat.
consuming it.
Kim is consumed by The Diplomat.
She is
season
consumed
2.
by it. Kerry Russell, who people, I had a crush on her when she was Felicity on the CW with that big mop of curly hair, and then I was dazzled by her in The Americans, where she played a Russian agent and could, she's like a chameleon playing all these different characters. Fantastic. And now she has gravitas as an American diplomat in London dealing with an international crisis that developed in season 1. So if you haven't watched season 1, don't even bother with season 2, but get
on season 1.
Oh my God, it is so entertaining. And her husband is played by a terrific actor by the name of Rufus Sewell. He's also in the diplomatic corps, and there is intrigue, and we don't know who's responsible for this international terroristic incident.
Well, who is responsible, Michael?
You keep asking me, and I'll tell you what right now, Mark. Sit down and watch The Diplomat on Netflix if you get a chance.
I don't know why I just love that as a runner. All right.
There you go. There you go.
Mars, who always has something nice to say about everything. Diplomat 2 was a letdown.
Yeah, okay.
They cut it down to 6 episodes instead of 8, and you're wondering at the end, what the F, really?
It's called the cliffhanger, Mars. As a matter of fact,
come on, Mars. It's called a cliffhanger,
Wake
dude.
up, buddy. Get on board.
Watching The Diplomat, says Lee. All right, so let me quickly recap the magical reflections of Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster. Loves The Diplomat, as we just told you, season 2, but he says you got to see season 1 first, notwithstanding the comments of Mars. The Black Cab movie is a movie with Nick Frost. It is it takes place a lot in the cab. He says it's okay. It's got its own virtues, but you have to be ready for a lot of action that takes place in and around the cab.
Yeah, and it's there's some ghost action. I wanted so much more.
You wanted to
considering.
like it, but you couldn't really like it.
I couldn't rave.
Weekend in Taipei sort of falls into that same category. Some great action sequences and some good stuff of drug lords and people running from them and good and evil. And,
Luke Evans apparently is Luc Besson's new leading man guy.
Yeah, but anyway, A Weekend in Taipei is in theaters. And Elevation is the movie about the man who's a father, has to get his son that breathing apparatus that the son desperately needs to survive. But they're monsters below 8,000 feet. So even as he inhabits this area above 8,000 feet, behind the walls, he has to go below 8,000 feet to get this device in Colorado. And so he does, assisted by the co-star, who's this lovely gal. It's always good to have a lovely gal with you. That's my dad. There's a lovely gal. That's my dad's term.
I always feel
There's
better.
A lovely gal.
I always feel better in the presence of a lovely gal.
Yeah, Dad, I've got to go get that breathing device. Why don't you take that lovely gal with you? Yeah. Anyway, Elevation, he said, is good, not great. Good, not great. Meanwhile on Earth is the film that is a sci-fi /
family drama.
Yeah, / what? Little supernatural.
Drenched. No, it's science fiction, but you're drenched in this crazy atmosphere. And
I love being drenched in a crazy atmosphere. Drenched loses her brother, the astronaut. She hears voices as she looks up at the great beyond. How much is indeed her brother communicating with her?
She hears him. Is he really there?
Yes.
And what are these strange people showing up?
Yes. Is he really there, Michael? Or can you
I can't tell you,
Okay.
Mark.
Christmas Eve in Miller's Point is the early 2000s warm slice of life movie.
It's a period dramedy. No, it's not even. It's very comic, and it's
got
just
some
like,
comic moments, but you're saying it's not.
Otherwise, it is. It's not a broad comedy. It's amusing, but it's wonderful to be in the presence of this family and seeing how they interact, because it does reflect a lot of what happens around the holidays for a good deal of the celebrants.
And celebrants is a ding word. By the way, I wanted to. I'll ask you next time. Holiday movie stuff. Small things, by the way, Christmas Eve in Miller's Point is in theaters. Small things like these. The Cillian Murphy, apparently very well acted, performed offering about the Magdalene laundries and the essentially indentured servitude and abuse that so many women endured through the 90s. Michael gave us that remarkable fact.
It's nuts, man.
Yeah. He really liked it, and he recommends it. Heretic is the Hugh Grant-led offering with Sophie Thatcher. Topher Grace makes a small appearance as well.
Is he one of your poker buddies, Topher Grace?
No. Who's the other guy who's in?
Wilmer Valderrama.
Wilmer, Wilmer not so much. The
Danny Masterson?
No, Danny, of course, yeah, Danny was one. But who was the? He wasn't in. Who was in? I forget.
It's okay.
Not important. He was married to. Doesn't matter. I've lost my mind. All right. Heretic, anyway, with Hugh Grant. He really likes it. It's a psychological thriller.
Thriller with a lot of religious subtext. Solid stuff.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Really, really good.
The creep factor is
Who
high.
was the first Spider-Man?
The very first Spider-Man? Tobey Maguire.
That's who I know through poker. Tobey Maguire.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
did he use his spidey sense to figure out what people were holding? I'm just asking.
I wish I'd thought of that. That's clever. But he likes, of all of these films, great culture blaster, is Heretic your pick?
Heretic, Meanwhile on Earth. Well, you know what? The best is the Magdalene Laundries drama. It's the most important.
Small
of the films.
things like these is your
Small
favorite.
things like these.
But what a great offering you've given us, and thank you.
Hey,
you can read the Culture Blaster at voicesf.org. Correct. voicesf.org. The Great Culture Blaster's musings. If you think you like them when he's speaking here, you'll love them when you're reading him. He's really a man of the written word, come to life here on this show every Friday. Michael?
Yes, sir.
Any closing thoughts?
49ers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Early game on Sunday, 10 a.m. I will be poised to see my guys, my team.
Love it when you're poised. He comes and goes on a rainbow. Let me hear it for the Culture Blaster, Michael Snyder, everybody.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
You are a force of nature, Michael. I so enjoy you. I don't know what to say.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Unhealthy appreciation for the Culture Blaster. Well, guys, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
We got to say thank you and wrap it up. As a matter of fact, we have a B.
It just popped in. Yeah. We have a what?
Oh, we have a, I was just going to say, we have a super sticker. Go ahead.
So we go back and check the tape, but in 4 years, one major bill passed is not enough, even if a big one. We should expect more. Well, B.O., you can say that this is about Joe Biden, but I will tell you that when you don't have Congress, it's really tell Donald Trump that you're man, because he was in there. He had all branches of government, and he got one bill passed. What was it? It was a tax cut. So, dude, I just think, whatever. Whimsy Coffee Harp, says Elise in Zaria.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, Elise, you know I love my coffee. The Coachella Valley Coffee. You can get it at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and you get 10% off. With the Mark T discount code, you get 10% off. If you at the holidays want to give that discount code to some other people, it's okay with me. It really is. Magdalene Laundry's on page 3 of Project 2025, coming to America in the new year. Ain't that true? Yeah. Well, thanks for getting us through the week, everybody. It is a group effort, and we get annoyed at each other. We get frustrated at each other. But we look forward to seeing each other. I mean, I really mean it. I know that, I get agitated. It's been a long week. Many of us haven't slept much. So it's one of those things, but it really is fun to see everybody here, regardless of what's happening. So, Albert, thank you.
Albert, thank you.
Kim, thank you.
Kim, how are you?
And
I blame you.
All right, maybe it is my fault, as she has the after party live coming up, and this is the great.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Out of time, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Until Monday. Bye-bye.